Greetings everyone. Welcome to Arth IAS. I am Amit Kumar. Dear aspirants, as you know that mains examination plays the most significant role in the UPSC civil services examination. And to crack mains examination, it requires rigorous answer writing practice. So, to ease your journey and the preparation of UPSC civil services examination, we have started our new initiative, that is daily answer writing practice. And today is day 1. Now, let's see what are we going to do in this initiative. So, in this initiative, we will discuss first 4 questions on daily basis. 4 questions from GS paper 1 to 4, means one question from GS paper 1, one question from GS paper 2, one question from GS paper 3, one question from GS paper 4, right? So that you can have a proper balance among all these 4 papers, because all these 4 papers carries equal marks. So you require a proper balance. Second, here we will do the in-depth analysis, plus we will provide you the solution, right? We will not only discuss the question, but on the screen we will write the answer, right? So that you can practice in better manner. Next, we will also cover last 15 years previous year question papers. As you know, whether it is prelims or mains, PYQs are very important. So in this series, in this initiative, we will discuss all 15 years PYQs, right? Next, we will also focus on static plus current affairs topic, right? Because question come from static as well as current affairs. Next, it is completely a mains oriented approach, and it will help you to develop your writing skills, right? So this is all about this initiative. Now, next, see, if you are a beginner and you are mastering about that how to start answer writing, right, then you can watch this video. The link is given in the description box. This video will help you to start from very basic, right? Now let's move further. Now, before starting mains answer writing, I would like to tell you some important points, right? So in any answer, right, UPSC demands 2 important things, right? What are these 2 important things? So first is quality, right? Focus on quality. And second, it requires time management, right? So what is quality? So see, in any answer, as you are going to become a civil servant, it demands a proper structure, right? Proper structure of your reports, right? Suggestions or letters, whatever, right? So in the same manner, your answer should be structured in a proper manner, right? So here, first thing that is demanded is structure of the answer, right? So every answer is divided into 3 parts, right? First is called introduction, right? So how to write introduction, I will tell you. Then second part is called body, and it is called the main part of the question, and the main focus, right, main issues are addressed here. And lastly, conclusion. You have to conclude every answer at the end, right? Now, another important thing that is required is the presentation. So when we talk about presentation of any answer, what does it mean? So see, first it requires a standard of language plus a good handwriting. Good handwriting means you don't need to become a calligrapher, but your handwriting should be legible, right? You should avoid any kind of overwriting or cutting, right? So first you have to maintain a standard of language, right? A standard language, because you are a future civil servant, right? You will run the district, so it demands a standard language. Plus, when we talk about standard language, it also requires, or here you can say, here you have to avoid any kind of grammatical errors. Means no grammatical error is allowed, right? No grammatical error. This is not allowed. Plus a legible handwriting. Right, legible handwriting, because the examiner should be able to read your answer. Right, you have structured the answer in proper manner, introduction, body, conclusion, but it is not legible. Right, the examiner or the person who is checking your copy is not able to read it properly, then obviously you will be penalized for that. So maintain a legible handwriting, a good handwriting. Avoid any kind of sloppiness, right, in your handwriting. Apart from that, avoid any kind of error, right, or overcutting, overwriting in your handwriting. Apart from that, also, to enhance your presentation, use maps, right, data, flowchart, diagrams, table, etc. So this is how the quality of answer should be maintained. Structure, a proper structure, introduction, body, conclusion, right, how to write, I'll tell you. Now presentation, so presentation should be very good. So very good here, maintain the standard of language. Second, avoid any kind of grammatical error. Next, maintain a legible handwriting. Apart from that, use maps, data, flowcharts, diagrams, table, right, in your answers. See, maps are mainly used in geography related question or IR related question, right, but you can use flowcharts, diagrams, table, right, in the questions where it is required, but do not use it unnecessarily, right. Sometimes it makes the answer boredom, right. Now, time management. So as you know that each and every GS paper plus essay plus optional paper, right, has, or UPSC gives you 3 hours time. You have to finish your paper within 3 hours. So we are discussing about GS paper. So in all GS paper you get 3 hours, right? Whether it is GS 1, 2, 3 or 4. Now within 3 hours you have to write 4,000 words. How 4,000 words? Because each question, whether it is GS 1 or whatever, right? GS 1, 2, 3, 4. So each question paper is categorized into 2 categories, right? 2 categories means one category carries 10 marks, right. One category question carries 10 marks and another category of questions carries 15 marks, right. And here for each 10 marker question, right, you have to answer in 150 words, right. We will see when we will discuss question, we will see. For each 10 marker question you have to write the answer in 150 words. For each 15 marker question you have to write in 250 words, right. And here you get 10 questions of 10 marker, right, 10 questions. Again you get 10 questions of 15 marks. So in total here you get 100 marks, right, and here you get 150 marks. So in total each GS paper carries 250 marks, 20 questions and time 3 years. So in total you have to write 4,000 words approximately, right, and 4,000 words within 3 hours. 3 hours is equal to 180 minutes, and if you divide 4,000 words by 180, right, so your average writing should be, right, your average writing speed should be 22 words per minute, right. That should be your average writing speed, right, in the mains examination, not on the first day, right. To reach that level you will take months, not days, or not 1 month or 2 months, it will take months, right. Apart from that, if you get, or if you categorize question wise, right, then for each 10 marker question you will have to write the answer within 7 minutes, right. So 7 into 10 question, 70 minutes, and for each 15 marker question, right, you have to answer this question in 11 minutes, right. So 11 into 10, right, 10 questions for means 11 minutes for each question of 15 marker. So 11 into 10, 110 minutes plus 70 minutes. So in total you have to finish the paper within 180 minutes, that is 3 hours. So this is how you have to manage, but don't worry about that, right? Keep it in mind, but you have to manage your time, right? But from the very first day, don't bother for time, right? You have to achieve this excellence, right, after certain months. First important thing is start your answer writing. Now let's see the first question. So this is the first question of GS paper 1, and this question is from modern Indian history, and we have picked from previous year 2024, right? This is a 10 marker question, and as I said, 10 marker means what? 150 words. So read the question. What were the events that led to Quit India movement? So question is about Quit India movement, right? And it demands the events, right? So here events means the causes or background factors that led to Quit India movement. See, if you are not able to understand the question in the first go, right, read it twice, thrice, even 4 times, right? Understand the question, understand the demand, right? Only then write the question, right? Now another part, point out its results. So here you have to focus, right? Two words. First is you have to point out the results. You have to reflect. You have to show, right, the results. What were the results means outcomes, right? Consequences of Quit India movement, and events means here factors or background factors or causes that led to Quit India movement, right? Now let's write the answer of this question. So this is the question, and again here I am highlighting that events plus results. You have to address these issues. So first, as I said, that each and every question has 3 parts: introduction, body, conclusion. So first write introduction, and as the question is about Quit India movement, right? So see, when you write introduction, so one of the easiest way to start any introduction, right, is to define the topic. Like, how should you start your introduction? I have already told in that video. I have told earlier. Right? Watch that video. So, in introduction, you have to define or you have to tell about Quit India movement. Right? So here I am writing. Just see. Quit India movement was launched by the Indian National Congress. Right? I am using abbreviation, but do not use abbreviation in your answers. Right? This is not allowed, whether it is test series or your mains exam. Right? Do not use abbreviation. Only universally used or applicable abbreviations are applied on, right? So avoid any kind of abbreviation. To save your time, I am using abbreviations. So Quit India movement was launched by Indian National Congress under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi on 8th August 1942. Right? Then, comma, was the final mass movement was the final mass movement against the British rule, demanding, you can write, movement against the British rule, demanding complete or immediate independence. Immediate independence. Right. So this is how you should write the introduction. If you write the if you read the introduction, it is quite clear that quit India movement has been addressed. Right. So it was launched by Indian National Congress under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. On which date? On 8th August 1942. See, whenever you are writing any historical event, right, you must write the date. Right. If you know the date, quite good. At least mention the year in brackets. Right. It will be an add-on. Right. And try to underline that word or that year or important personality. Right. Now, was the final mass movement against British rule demanding immediate independence. So now introduction is complete. Now, one more important thing I would like to tell you, that when the question is right of 150 words, right? So try to maintain the introduction within 20 to 30 words. Right? Do not cross this word limit. Right? Means crossing the word limit is not allowed. Though plus minus 10 word or 5 words are allowed, but avoid any kind of word, means crossing the word limit. Simple. Now we have to address another part, that is body. See, one more important thing, that do not use such words in your answer. Initially you can use, right, you are taking the first step, so you can use such words, but in your, after spending certain time, right, or in your test series or in the mains examination, do not use such words, introduction, body or conclusion. Right. The examiner is experienced enough, he knows the structure. Right. You don't require to tell him the introduction, body or conclusion. To make you understand, I am writing such words. So avoid such things. Now, under body. So the question is demanding first the events, the factors, right? The factors or causes, right, that led to quit India movement, and second, the results of or consequences, outcomes of quit India movement. So first we will address the first part, that is events that led to or events leading to quit India movement. Now you can make arrow like this, it will save your time. So one of the most important factor that led to quit India movement, right, or launch of quit India movement was failure of Cripps mission plan. Right. So first here you can write failure of Cripps mission. In brackets you can mention the year 1942. Right. And in the same year, see, under Cripps mission plan, right, British offered dominion status to India, but Indian leaders, right, Indian political leaders, especially leaders of Indian National Congress, rejected this offer, right, and that's why Cripps mission failed, leading to Quit India movement, right. Second, impacts of Second World War, right. So impacts of Second World War, what happened? That Second World War took place between 1939 to 42, right, and India was dragged forcibly. Right, Indians were not interested to support British or take participate in Second World War. Right, but they were forcibly involved, leading to economic hardship. Inflation went high. Right, killing led to killings of Indian soldiers. So also impacts of Second World War led to Quit India movement. Right. Next, you can write growing demands of independence, right? Growing demand of independence, right? Which kind of independence you can use? Complete independence, right? Because under Peace mission, British were offering dominion status, but Indians rejected, and there were growing demands of complete independence that led to Quit India movement. Another example, Japanese advances in Asia. So, what is the meaning of Japanese advances in India? See, fall of Singapore and Burma, currently known as Myanmar, right, exposed British supremacy, right? Means it was exposed that if you have a good army, good defense system, right, then you can defeat British, right? British is not invincible. So, Japanese advances in Asia exposed British supremacy or British power, right? That was means it. So it led to the led confidence in Indians that we can also defeat British, right? And final and the most important reason, Gandhi's call for mass struggle or mass participation, right? Mass struggle or participation, you can write it, right? So these were the factors, the events leading to Quit India movement, and you can right follow this same pattern in your examination, right? It will save your time, right? Now, second part, that is the results of Quit India movement, right? The results of Quit India movement. Clear? Now, so here you can categorize the result of Quit India movement into two categories. First is immediate result and second is long term results, right? So here immediate results, so mainly two immediate results. What? First, that top Congress leaders were arrested, right? Or you can write most of the Congress leaders were arrested, right? Immediately after launch of Quit India movement. And second factor is Quit India movement was suppressed by using extensive force, right? So Quit India movement was suppressed by using extensive force. Suppressed by British, you can write. Suppressed by British using extensive force, right? So this was the immediate result. Now another sub part, that is long term results of Quit India movement. Long term results. So under long term results, first you can write that it demonstrated the weakness or widespread public interest or public support for independence, right? You can write demonstrated widespread demand of people for complete independence. Right? So it was the long effect or long term result. Second important point you can write that made British governance almost or increasingly difficult. Right? Made British government or governance increasingly difficult. Right? So increasingly difficult means what? Now British started feeling, right, that it is almost impossible to continue British rule in India, and it is better to leave India, better to free India. Right? And last but not the least, it prepared the ground for the independence in 1947. Right? Prepared ground for independence in 1947. So, Quit India movement, it was launched in which year? 1942. Right? And we got independence in 1947. So, just after 5 years, right, we got independence. And in getting independence, Quit India movement played a significant role. Quite clear? So, we have addressed the main question, right? Main part of question, events plus results. Now, you have to conclude the answer, right? Conclusion. So here you have to write conclusion, and again I am telling you, conclude your answer within 20 to 30 words maximum, right? Maximum 20 words or 30 words, that is allowed. Maximum, right? You can count in 20 to 30 words, or approximately you can say in 50 words, right? 40 to 50 words you have addressed introduction and conclusion. Rest you have 100 words, and in 100 words you have to address the body, the main part of question. Right? So, how should you write the conclusion? And while writing the conclusion, right, you should remember that you have to reflect the essence of the answer. Right? Essence means introduction, whatever you have addressed in introduction, and body, both should be reflected in conclusion. Right? So, here you have to write that although Quit India movement was suppressed, it marked a decisive turning point in India's freedom struggle, right, by weakening British legitimacy and hastening the end of colonial rule in India. Just right? I'm writing, you can write. Although Quit India movement was suppressed, it played a decisive role in the in India's freedom struggle. Right? India's freedom struggle by weakening British rule or British legitimacy, by weakening British legitimacy legitimacy and hastening the end of colonial rule in India. Right? Now, read the answer, read the conclusion. Right? You will find that we have addressed the Quit India movement, right, and its outcome, both. But we have not repeated the same sentence, right? Do not repeat any word, right? Any sentence, right? Not word, but any sentence you have written in body or introduction, right? Though both should be reflected in your conclusion. So here we have written that although Quit India movement was suppressed, it played a decisive role in India's freedom struggle by weakening British legitimacy and hastening the end of colonial rule in India. So this is how you should write your answer. Right? Now just have a complete look. Right? So first we have written the introduction, maximum 20 to 30 words. Then we have written the body, main part, right? And in the body we have addressed both the demands of question, events plus results. Right? Events means factor that led to Quit India movement, and results means outcomes or consequences of Quit India movement. Then we concluded our answer. Right? This is how you should structure your answer. This is how you should present your answer. Right? Such type of arrow marks. Right? It will save your time. Now we will move towards the next question. Now, second question. So this question is from GS paper 2, covering polity and constitution section, right? And here you can see this question is from British and Indian parliamentary system, right? And here we have picked previous year question of 2023, 10 marker question, 150 words, right? So read the question. It says, compare and contrast the British and Indian approaches to parliamentary sovereignty, right? So these are the two tell words or directives: compare and contrast about Indian approaches to British and Indian approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. So this question is about parliamentary sovereignty in India and Britain. Now, what is the meaning of compare and contrast? So whenever the question includes these two words, compare and contrast. Compare means you have to write the similarities, right? As you know that we have adopted the Westminster model or British parliamentary model. So there are similarities between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. Apart from that, contrast. Contrast means what? The differences, right? What are the differences? So the differences between British and Indian parliamentary system, right? Now, just write the answer. So first, we will write the introduction. So as I said, that in introduction, you have to approach the main topic. And what is the main topic? Parliamentary sovereignty, right? So you have to write the meaning of parliamentary sovereignty. What do you mean by parliamentary sovereignty? So parliamentary sovereignty simply means that the supreme law making authority of parliament, right? So here you can write parliamentary sovereignty means or refers to, you can write either, means supreme law making authority of parliament, right? That is the simple meaning of parliamentary sovereignty. Now you have to address both British as well as Indian approaches, right? So it should be reflected in your introduction, right? So here you can write, while India adopted Westminster model from the UK, right? Here you can write, while India adopted the Westminster model, right? The British parliamentary system is also known as Westminster model, right? Model, apart from that, model from the United Kingdom. In short, I am writing UK, right? United Kingdom, comma, it modified the principles to suit its written constitution and federal democratic framework. It means India, it modified it modified the principles to, the principles means the principles of British parliamentary system, the principles to suit its written constitution and the federal democratic structure, right? Now read the answer, right? Read the introduction, you will understand, right? So in the introduction we have addressed first the meaning of parliamentary sovereignty. What is the meaning of parliamentary sovereignty? It means supreme law making authority of parliament. Clear? Now again we have also addressed the British as well as Indian approaches, right? So India adopted Westminster model from the UK, right? It modified the principles to suit its written constitution, right? We have modified the principle, right? So that it can suit our written constitution plus our federal democratic structure. In Britain it is unitary democratic structure, but in India we have federal democratic structure, right? This is one of the, or you can say it is a good introduction. Now we will address the main part, that is body. So in the body, as I said, that the question demands compare and contrast. So comparison means what? Similarities, right? What are the similarities between British and Indian approaches? So first we will address the similarities. So here similarities between British, right? Similarities between British and Indian approaches. Now, what are the similarities? Just write in points. First, both countries have parliamentary form of government or parliamentary system of government. So this is the first similarity. Another similarity, in both countries executive is responsible to the lower house. In India it is known as Lok Sabha, right? In Britain it is known as House of Commons, right? So first point, parliamentary form of government, right? First point. Second point, executive is collectively responsible to the lower house. Clear? This is the second similarity. Another similarity, parliament is the primary law making body or law making institution in both countries, right? Or law making body or institution, you can write either. Institution, right? And last similarity, that is council of ministers derive legitimacy from parliamentary majority, right? In both countries, the ruling government should have parliamentary majority. Only the majority political party rules, right? Council of ministers derives, right, derives legitimacy from parliamentary majority. So these are the similarities between British and Indian approaches. Now we will differentiate between both, right? What are the differences? The question is demanding the contrast. Contrast means what? Differences. So whenever you have to write the differences, contrast, right, you have to distinguish between two topics, two objects, right? So best method is draw a table, draw a comparison table, right? So here now, so differences between British and Indian approaches, right? Now you have to differentiate. So here one side just write Britain, another side write India. Simple. Now, what are the differences? So first, in Britain there is unwritten constitution, and as it has unwritten constitution, it is a flexible constitution, right? So first difference, unwritten and flexible constitution. Whereas in India, we have a well-written constitution, right? Well-written constitution, right? Plus, our constitution is blend of both rigidity as well as flexibility, right? So you can write well-written constitution with rigidity and flexibility as well. Clear? So this is the first difference. Other differences, right? Second point you can write. So what are the other differences? In Britain, Parliament is legally supreme, right? It is said that British Parliament can do anything except changing a man into woman or vice versa, right? So Parliament, right? Parliament means British Parliament is, right? Parliament is legally supreme, is legally supreme. But can we say in India we have, or the parliament is supreme in India? The answer is no. Right? We have constitutional supremacy. Right? Means whether it is legislature, executive, or judiciary. Right? They have to follow constitutional provisions. They cannot surpass constitution. Right? So in India we have constitutional supremacy, not parliamentary supremacy. Right? Constitutional supremacy limits the parliament. Clear? Another difference, right? Courts cannot invalidate laws passed by parliament or laws of parliament. Courts cannot or can't invalidate laws made by parliament. Right? So in Britain, parliament can make any law. Right? And if we comparison the judiciary in Britain as comparison to parliament, right? Judiciary is weaker to as comparison to parliament. Parliament is supreme, right? But in India, courts can invalidate law passed by parliament, right? And if it violates the constitutional provisions, right? So here you can write courts can invalidate laws of parliament violating constitution. Simple, right? Another difference, as I said, in Britain there is unitary form of government, right? So Britain is a unitary state, but in India we have federal structure, right? Currently we have three-tier government: union government, state government, and local self-government, right? So we have federal structure, and as we have federal structure, it limits the power of parliament, right? Federal structure limits the powers of parliament, right? Means we have, for example, union as well as states both derive their power from constitution, right? And you must be knowing about the three list, right? Seventh schedule, union list, state list, concurrent list. So union government means the union parliament cannot make laws on subjects mentioned in state subject or state list, right? Last important point you can write, that is parliament can amend any part of constitution, right? Parliament can amend any part of the constitution, right? And no, why? Because no judicial review, right? As I said earlier, British parliament can do anything, right? It can make any law, it can amend any part of constitution. But in India, though constitutional amendment is allowed, parliament can amend the constitution, but it is subject to judicial review. Best example, Keshwanand Bharti case propounded the doctrine of basic structure, right? There are certain provisions in the constitution that cannot be altered, that cannot be amended, right? So here constitutional amendments, right? Constitutional amendments are subject to judicial review, In brackets you can mention Keshwanand Bharati case, right? Propounded the doctrine of basic structure. Clear? So these are the differences between the British and Indian parliamentary system, right? Now we will write the conclusion. We have to conclude the answer, right? So again, in the conclusion, you have to reflect both introduction, body, and the essence of question, right? So here you can write, thus, while British Parliament or Britain embodies absolute parliamentary sovereignty, right? India follows constitutional supremacy with federal or limited parliamentary sovereignty, right? Here you can write, thus, British or Britain follows, right? Britain follows or embodies or adopted, you can write either. So follows absolute parliamentary sovereignty sovereignty, right? India follows constitutional supremacy with limited parliamentary sovereignty. India follows constitutional supremacy with limited parliamentary sovereignty, right? Limited parliamentary sovereignty. Then you can continue parliamentary sovereignty, ensuring a balance between democratic governance, ensuring a balance between democratic governance democratic governance, right? Plus fundamental rights, federalism, and judicial review, right? Fundamental rights, federalism, and judicial review, right? Do not use abbreviation, as I said earlier, right? To save your time, I'm using abbreviation. So this is how the conclusion should be, right? Now just have a quick look. So we have addressed the introduction, right? First introduction, then body. In the body we have addressed both the parts, right? Compare and contrast, compare and contrast. So comparison means similarity, contrast means differences, right? And lastly we have addressed the conclusion. Now next question from GS paper 3. So in GS paper 3 we have picked the question of 2021, right? And again 10 marker question, you have to answer in 150 words. So first read the question. It says distinguish, right? So the tail word or the directive is distinguish. Distinguish means what? Differentiate. Tell the differences between capital budget and revenue budget. So capital budget and revenue budget are part of the budget, right? Government budget. Clear? Explain the components of both these budgets. So you have to define what is budget, what is government budget, right? Then you have to also include that budget includes revenue budget plus capital budget, right? Apart from that, you have to differentiate between capital budget and revenue budget. Also, you have to explain the components. What are the components, right? Components of revenue budget and capital budget. Now, let's begin. So here, first we will write the introduction. Right? So, under introduction, you have to write that the government budget, as both capital budget, revenue budget are part of government budget. So, you have to write, you have to define the government budget at first and then include both this. Right? So, you can write the government budget is an annual financial statement or an estimated, you can write an an estimated annual financial statement right, of receipts and expenditure, right? Estimated annual financial statement of receipts and expenditure, right? Generally, an annual financial statement, that is commonly called a budget, includes what? Receipt and expenditure. Clear? Expenditures. Apart from that, you can continue that it is broadly divided into revenue budget and capital budget, reflecting the government's recurring and asset related. Just continue. It includes the revenue budget. In short, I am writing revenue budget for, right, RB, revenue budget and capital budget, capital budget, reflecting the government's reflecting the government's recurring and asset related financial transactions, right? Recurring and asset related financial transactions. Clear? Now, read the introduction once again. It will make you understand more better, right? So, we have defined the government budget that it is an estimated annual financial statement of receipts and expenditure. Clear? Right? Now, it includes, as the question includes both capital and revenue budget. So, we have included both. It includes revenue budget and capital budget, right? Reflecting government's recurring. So, revenue budget is related to recurring expenditure and recurring receipts, and asset related financial transactions. So, asset related transactions are related to capital budget. We will see further. Clear? Now, we will address the second part, that is body. So, in the body, you have to differentiate between the revenue budget and capital budget. Clear? Then you have to explain the components of revenue budget and capital budget. So first we will differentiate differences between revenue budget and capital budget. So whenever you differentiate between two objects, right, two topics, so just draw a table. It is the best representation method, right? So one side we will write the revenue budget, another side we will write the capital budget. So first, what is revenue budget? So see, in revenue budget deals with the recurring receipts or expenditure. Recurring means which is done on regular basis. For example, government pays salary, right? Salary to government employees. It is done on regular basis, recurring basis, right? Interest on loan, right? Again on recurring basis. Subsidies, right? Grants. All these are done on recurring basis. So all these are part of revenue budget. So here you can write recurring budget deals with recurring receipts or expenditure. Deals with recurring receipts and expenditures, right? Example you can write. So here salaries, right? Salaries to government employees, right? Receipts like taxes, right? Taxes are nothing but revenue for government, whether central government or state government. So here example, taxes and under taxes. Taxes can be categorized, right? Direct tax, indirect tax, right? So taxes are what? Receipts for government, right? Salaries salaries to government employees, these are part of expenditure, revenue expenditure. Clear? Another side, capital budget. So here it deals with asset and liability related transactions. So deals with assets and liability, or you can say liabilities, right? Liabilities related transactions. Clear? Example, borrowings, loans, right? Borrowings means what? Loans. So these are nothing but the part of capital budget. For example, government is taking loan internally or externally, right? Known as borrowings. So it creates liability for government, right? Again, infrastructure, infrastructure related spendings, right? Government is developing rail, road, ports. So these are called infrastructure related spendings. So these are part of what? Or these are creating assets, right? Government is acquiring assets, right? So these are part of capital budget. So this is the main difference. Again, another difference, revenue budget means the components of revenue budget does not create asset or reduces liabilities. Does not create assets or reduces liabilities, right? It helps in maintaining the day-to-day expenses, right? Short-term operational expenses. So revenue budget does not create any asset or reduces any liabilities. Simple. Now capital budget, it creates assets, right? For example, government is acquiring any asset, right? Purchasing any company or developing infrastructure. So creating assets or create assets and reduces, right? Reduces or increases both. So reduces liabilities. Simple, right? Now, as I said, it has what short term impact. So it includes short term operational expenses. Short term operational expenses, right? Here in capital budget, it impacts or it develops long term developmental expenses. So here long term developmental expenses, right? Now we have addressed one part of the constitution. Sorry, question, right? So we have differentiated between revenue budget and capital budget. So these are the differences between revenue budget and capital budget. Now we will address another part, that is what are the components of revenue budget and capital budget. Components of revenue budget, right? So what are the components of revenue budget? Again, revenue budget can be categorized into two categories: revenue receipts, revenue expenditure. So revenue receipts, and second one is revenue expenditure. Clear? Now again, revenue receipts can be categorized into two categories. First is tax revenue, right? From name it is clear. Tax revenue like what? GST, income tax, IT, I am writing in short, income tax, right? Corporate tax. So these are part of tax revenue. Another part, non-tax revenue. So non-tax revenue includes, for example, government is receiving interest on loans given to public sector undertakings or state governments. So here it includes, for example, interest received, right? Interest received, as I said, on loans from public sector enterprises or undertakings or state governments or any other country, right? Apart from that, right, other incomes which are not part of tax revenue. Now revenue expenditure. So under revenue expenditure, as I said, it helps in maintaining day to day or short term operational expenses, right? For example, salaries to government employees, right? Interest on loans, interest on loans, right? The central government or union government also takes loan, right? Whether internally or externally. So interest paid is nothing but revenue expenditure, right? Apart from that, subsidies, right? Grants, all these are part of revenue expenditure. So we have explained the components of revenue budget: revenue receipt, revenue expenditure. Now we will explain the components of capital budget. capital budget, right? So again you can categorize capital budget just like revenue budget in two categories: capital receipt, capital expenditure, right? Capital receipts, and second capital expenditures, right? Now what are the example of capital receipts and capital expenditure? So capital receipts, see, interest on loan, right? Interest on loan means the interest that is received by the government on which it has given to state government or public sector undertakings, right? Then it is called revenue receipt. But when the government receives the original amount of loan, right, then it is considered as capital receipt. And capital receipt occurs only once, right, and on long term basis. In short, you have to remember, revenue receipt, revenue budget related to short term, capital budget related to long term, right? Whether expenses or receipts or expenditure, right? Simple. In simple manner, you have to remember. Now, so capital receipts example, right? I am not writing each and everything. Just remember. So, for example, market borrowings, right? Market borrowings or loans from internally or external, right? So here you can write market borrowings. Government is taking loan, right? Even from international institutions like World Bank or IMF or any other country, right? Next, recovery of loan, also recovery of loan. Apart from that, proceeds from disinvestment. For example, government is selling any part or any public sector undertaking, then the amount received from that, right, that proceeding is known as capital receipt, right? So here proceeds from disinvestment, right? It is also known as what? Capital receipt. Now, capital expenditure. So, expenditure done for long term basis, right? For example, spending on infrastructure, right? Acquisition of assets, loans and advances. So, spendings on infrastructure, right? Acquisition of assets. Again, what? Loans and advances. So, all these are part of capital budget. So, we have addressed all the components, right, of the question. See, now we have to conclude the answer, right? Now, in the conclusion, again, as I said, reflect the question, essence of the question. So, the question is about budget and components of budget, that is revenue budget, capital budget. So, here you can write, right? I am telling you can write that a prudent balance between revenue budget and capital budget is crucial for maintaining, right? A prudent balance, a prudent balance between revenue budget and capital budget is crucial for maintaining fiscal discipline, is crucial for maintaining fiscal discipline, fiscal discipline, right? You can give, right, comma, while while promoting long term economic growth, comma, while promoting long term economic growth and sustainable development. Right now, so the answer is complete now. Just have a quick look. So first we have written the introduction, right? We have addressed the main topic of the question, right? Then we wrote the body, right? So here we have differentiated between revenue budget and capital budget, the main demand of the question. Apart from that, we have also mentioned the components of revenue budget, capital budget, and finally we have concluded the answer. Now, fourth and last question of the day. So this question is from GS paper 4, that is ethics, and we have picked 2021's previous year question paper, right? So here just read the question. It says integrity, right? So integrity is a value that empowers human being, right? So it is quite clear that the question is about integrity. Justify, right? Justify with suitable illustration. So two tell words, justify plus suitable illustration, right? So justify means what is the meaning of justify? So when the question demands justify, you have to give logical arguments, reasons plus examples, right? So justify means you have to give logical arguments, reasons, right? And to substantiate your logical arguments and reasons, you have to give examples, right? And that's why the question demands suitable illustration. Illustration means what? Examples, right? So in simple manner, how should you structure the answer? First, define the integrity. What is integrity? What do you mean by integrity, right? Then you have to define in the body that how integrity empowers human being, right? Because it is saying that empowers the human being. Clear? So you have to define how integrity empowers the person, right? At personal level, at social level, at professional level, right? Means personal empowerment, social empowerment, and professional empowerment, right? All these three should be reflected in your answer. Now, just write. So first we will write the introduction. So what should be the introduction? You have to define integrity. What is integrity? So integrity is the quality of adhering to moral principles, honesty, and ethical values, right? In thoughts, speech, and action, right? So here you can write integrity, right? Integrity is the quality of adhering to, right? I am saying you can write integrity is the quality of adhering to moral principles in thoughts, speech, right? Speech, or you can say words, right? Thoughts, speech, or words, and actions, right? Thoughts, speech, or words, and actions, right? You can give full stop. Now you can continue further. It aligns a person's conduct, right? You can continue. It aligns a person's conduct with his or her conscience and values. It aligns a person's conduct with his or her with his or her conscience and conscience and conscience and values, right? Now, so what is integrity? It is the quality of adhering to moral principles in what? In thoughts, speech and action, right? There is a quote in Sanskrit: manas ekam vachas ekam karman ekam. It means let my thought, word and action be one, right? So if your thought, word and action is one, it means you have integrity. Or any person, right, who have the same thought, same speech and same action, right, the person has integrity, right? Take example of any great personality, right? Best example, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Mahatma Gandhi, right? Gautam Buddha, Swami Vivekananda, right? Or any other, even Ratan Tata. So all these person have integrity, and not only integrity, high integrity, right? Lal Bahadur Shastri, high integrity, right? Some honest civil servants like Mr. Ashok Khemka, high integrity, right? So this is the definition of integrity. You have addressed the introduction, right? Now you have to write the body, main part. So in the body you have to write what? How integrity empowers human being. So here you just write in the body, right? How integrity empowers human beings. Clear? Now, as I said earlier, that integrity empowers a human being at three levels. Means at personal level, at social level, and at professional level. Right? Personal empowerment, social empowerment, and professional empowerment. So first we will discuss here, right, or explain the personal empowerment. So in personal empowerment, right, integrity, it helps you to gain what? Self-respect and self-confidence. Right? So here make an arrow and you can simply write helps in gaining self-respect and self-respect and self what? Self-confidence. Right? Self-respect and self-confidence. You can add more. You can, right, after self-confidence, it gives you moral courage. Right? Gives moral courage. Right? To stand. Right? To take a stand. Take stand. Right? In favor of right. Clear? So it gives you moral courage so that you can stand in favor of, or you can take stand in favor of right, or you can take a step against wrong. Right? Plus it also help you in developing inner peace. Right? And what is the meaning of inner peace? It helps you to reduce conflict between values and your action. Right? If there is no conflict or very less conflict, or you are able to reduce the conflict between your values and action, obviously it will lead you to inner peace. Right? Now another subtopic, that is social empowerment. under social empowerment, you can write that it helps you to gain trust, credibility, reputation, right? So, trust, credibility, reputation, right? Apart from that, it also gives you, or you can develop interpersonal relationship, right? From people to people, right? We live in society, we are social creature. That's why we require to develop interpersonal relationship, right? Developing and maintaining, right? And maintaining interpersonal relationship, right? You can add something more, like it enables to inspire and influence others, right? Enables to inspire and influence others, right? This is how it leads to social empowerment. Now, third and last, that is professional empowerment. So, under professional empowerment, see, in future you will become civil servant, right? And it will be your professional life. So, at professional level, right, integrity empowers you. How? For example, you become more accountable and responsible, right? It gives you more accountability, or it gives you more strength, so that you can hold more accountability, more responsibility. Apart from that, it makes you impartial, right? Helps you in taking ethical decisions, right? So, helps in accountability plus accountability plus responsibility, right? Second, second, as I said, what is it? It helps you to develop, or makes you more impartial and helps in ethical decision making, right? So, impartiality and ethical decision making, ethical decision making, right? And lastly, it also helps in leadership effectiveness plus public confidence, right? Leadership effectiveness, leadership effectiveness plus gaining public confidence, right? Now, we have addressed each and every part of question, right? Simply you have to write the conclusion, right? We have written the introduction, then we have addressed the body and how integrity empowers human being, right? In personal empowerment, social empowerment, and professional empowerment. Now you have to write the conclusion, and the question is, the answer is complete, right? Again, in the conclusion, just conclude what is integrity, right? So here you can write, integrity empowers individuals by providing moral strength, public trust, and ethical clarity. You can write, I am telling you, you can write, integrity empowers individuals by providing moral strength, public trust, and ethical clarity, right? It transforms ordinary individuals into, it transforms ordinary individuals into credible leaders, and and it remains the cornerstone of good governance and responsible citizenship. So integrity is what? it it is nothing but the cornerstone of good governance plus responsible citizenship. So this is how your conclusion is complete, right? Now, in today's lesson, we have discussed four questions, right? We have written their answers, right? We have each and explained each and everything, whether tail words or parts, subparts, right? Every aspect. Now, in spite of that, if you have any kind of doubt, you can comment in the comment box, right? Or you can contact us through our official email, right? I will answer personally. Next, we will meet in another important lecture. And before saying bye to you, right, just start answer writing from today, right? Take initial steps, right? Then one day you will achieve the mastery. Thank you for watching.